Have you ever done something that's changed the world? I bet you have. Let's talk about it.
When I have a worry-filled mind, I like to wander outside. No telling what we might find. Birds calling, worms crawling, leaves falling down from above. Oh, I plant my feet on the ground. I keep my head in the clouds. I let my feelings out loud. I hear joy calling, fear crawling, tears falling down out of love.
Welcome, friends. I'm so glad you're here. My name is Mrs. A, if you don't already know, and I always like to start off by taking a moment to check in with our feelings. Sometimes we look at this poster that has a bunch of different feelings or emotions on it, and sometimes we look at these color zones here called the zones of regulation. And today I want to remind you what each of those different color zones mean, and then I'm going to ask you to identify your own color zone. So let's look at the different colors. The first one is blue. And if you're in the blue zone, that means that you're feeling tired, maybe moving slowly. You might be feeling a little sick or sad or lonely. If you're in the green zone, that means you're feeling comfortable. You are probably feeling focused. Your brain is clear. You're not feeling too distracted or too tired, kind of feeling settled. If you're in the yellow zone, that means that your body is starting to lose control. Maybe your brain is a little distracted. Maybe you're starting to feel worried or nervous or anxious about something. Maybe you're feeling confused or frustrated. You feel like you're losing control and not quite as settled. And then there's the red zone, and that means you are feeling like you've lost control. Maybe you can't think clearly. Maybe you keep trying to start an activity or a job and you just have to keep stopping because your brain is really crowded or busy, stressed or overwhelmed. Maybe you feel like you might explode. You've lost control of your voice or your body. And so all of these zones are things that we experience throughout the day, throughout the week. And remember, there are no good or bad zones. There are just lots of different ways that we as humans can feel. And so I'd like you to take a moment and think about how you're feeling right now. What zone are you in? Once you identify that zone, go ahead and grab an object or point to something nearby you that matches your color zone. I'll do that too. Did you identify your zone? What color are you in? I'm in the green zone right now. I'm feeling clear-headed. I'm feeling peaceful in my body, settled, calm. I had a really big breakfast. I took some time out in nature, and that helps me feel settled and calm. What about you? Thanks for sharing. The reason we practice identifying our zones and our feelings is to help us actually build those muscles and get used to naming our feelings and communicating or sharing them with others. When we share them out loud, it helps others get to know us better. It helps others understand our needs or how they can help. But it also actually helps ourselves. It helps our brains and our bodies get more comfortable with us and understanding those feelings and all the things that we may experience. So thanks for giving that a try today. Another thing I would love for you to give a try is moving our bodies together. And I use the date to help us. The date is a good way to not only remind us of what day or what month we're in, but also give us a little jump start on how many exercises we can do. So we don't have to overthink it or get stuck if we can't think of something. We just get right to it. So for me, the date is 3/21/22. And if you're watching this video on a different day, that's okay. you can always change those numbers. The first number represents our month, the third month. So we had January, February, March. March is the third month. The second number, 21, represents the day of the month. Again, that may be different for you. And the third number represents our year, 2022. My guess is that may still be the same because we are early in our year 2022. So we're going to do 3 moves, then 21 moves, then 22 moves. But before we get started, we'll check in with our friend Fig, who's always here to help show one of the exercises or stretches or moves that we'll do. And today's, I think, is a little tricky. Go ahead and make some observations. Look carefully at the shape of their body, see what you notice. You can even try making that shape. And you can make a few guesses. What do you think they're showing us? They'll tell us a little bit later after we get started with our 3 moves. And our 3 moves are a soft start, just 3 neck rolls. You can do these sitting or standing. You can do them in one direction or the other, whatever feels best for you. Let's count up to 3 as we do neck rolls. 1, 2, 3. Nice work. Now, this next move is definitely going to get our bodies a bit more warmed up, probably raise our heart rate a bit, which is one of the great things about exercising. Exercising can help us build our muscles so we get strong, and it can also keep our heart healthy, which helps keep our body healthy. When we raise our heart rate and then lower it again, it builds our heart muscle. So this next move, like I said, is definitely going to build our heart muscle, but it's going to require us to stand if we're able. We'll also need a little bit of space around us because we are going to do invisible jump rope jumps. Now, you may really have a jump rope nearby. That's great. And if you're in a good space to use it, feel free. But not everyone has a jump rope right nearby all the time. So we're going to do some invisible jump rope jumps. We're going to do 21 of them. And so we'll count all the way up to 21 by ones. Are you ready? Let's go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Oh, do you feel your heart beating quickly? Me too. Great job building your heart muscle. Now, last but not least is Fig's move, and we're going to do 22 of them. But before we hear from Fig, I want to remind you that when we have an even number, like 2, we count by 2s. And if you're not sure how to count by 2s yet, that's okay. You can practice and follow along with me. And if you already know, that's great too. Let's do 22 of Fig's moves. What are you showing us, Fig? Side stretches. Awesome. Now, you can do side stretches sitting or standing, whatever's best for you and your space. All you have to do is stick your arms out wide and stretch to either side. Now, like I said, we'll count by 2s, so I'm going to skip all of the odd numbers. Let's get started. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 22. Thanks, Fig, and thanks, friends, for giving that a try with me. Now, to wrap up our day exercise, we always take some cool down breaths. It helps us settle back in, cool our bodies, and also lower our heart rate. So when you hear a bell, you can breathe in big, fill your belly with air, and then slowly let it out. Let's breathe together. Thank you so much for trying that out with me today. At the beginning of this episode, I asked if you have ever done anything that's changed the world. And maybe you're thinking, what? That sounds really big or overwhelming. I haven't done anything that's changed the world. But I want to talk today about a lot of the things that we do every day, big or small, that do impact and change the world. It could be something as sweet as sharing with your sibling. That could change the world for them. It could be something as big as organizing a coat collection in your community. That could change the world for a lot of people during the cold winter days. And we're going to talk today about a young woman who started changing the world when she was just a young girl in school. And I'm really excited to share a bit about her story. But before we do, let's take a peek at our message to learn a little bit more. In my journal here, I write the messages for each time we're together. And in the messages I write, I often hide alliterations and onomatopoeias. And an alliteration is when there are two words next to each other or nearby, or three words even, that start with the same letter and sound. And onomatopoeias are sound words, like crash and bang. So you can be on the lookout for those while we read together. Dear courageous and compassionate kids, have you heard about climate change? About how our actions and decisions have impacted and continue to impact the environment? For example, when we work to care for our garden, nature's creatures, and our community, we can all live happy and healthy. However, when we chop down lots of plants, ignore our neighbors' needs, and forget about how we're all connected, lots of problems arise. People and big companies run by people are causing climate change, which causes changes in our weather and how healthy the land, animals, and bugs are. The good news is that we can all do something to help. We can reduce what we buy, reuse what we have, repair what's broken, share our resources, and compost or recycle the rest. When we take time to make compassionate and thoughtful choices, our whole world is better off. Love, Mrs. A. Have you ever done any of the things that I mentioned here? Have you ever shared your resources, any of your treasures or talents or time? Have you ever taken care of a garden or grown food? Have you ever repaired or fixed something that was broken? Have you ever reused something you already had? Oh, wonderful. And maybe you have also tried to help and care for your neighbors or for animals around you. Those are all things that may seem small, but can have a really big impact and help change the world for the better. And as I mentioned, there's a young woman who has been working to help change the world for the better and working to inspire us all to change the world right where we are. And her name is Greta Thunberg. And maybe you've heard of her, but today I want to share this book with you. It's called Greta and the Giants. It's inspired by Greta Thunberg's stand to save the world. And just on the cover, if we look closely, I see lots of animals and people, and in the back I see big, shadowy giants. And maybe you heard in our message about those big companies that are run by people that are causing a climate change. And I'm wondering if those big giants may be related to those big companies, and how Greta and her friends and you and I could help change that. And so Greta and the Giants is written by Zoe Tucker with illustrations by Zoe Persico. And we're going to read just a few pages together of this really beautiful book that tells us in an imaginative way a bit about Greta's story and a bit about her life and the work that she's been doing since she was young. Let's listen. One morning, things weren't quite as they should be. Greta stepped out into her yard, and there, huddled together in the shadows of the trees, were all the animals of the forest. A soft, silvery brown wolf stepped forward, with his tail low to the ground. "Please help us," he whispered. The forest is broken and we don't know where to go. The giants are ruining our home. Now, do you think a wolf really stepped out to talk to Greta in her forest? No, he probably didn't really step out and start speaking a language she would understand. But she had been so connected to the environment and the land around her and cared so deeply that she noticed when things weren't quite right. She noticed when the animals looked like they were sad or acted in a way that made them appear uncomfortable or unsafe. And paying attention to all of the parts of nature can really help us know when we're having an impact that isn't so helpful or good, and when we're having an impact that is helpful and good. The giants had always been there, for as long as Greta could remember, but now they were worse than ever. They were huge, lumbering oafs, and they were always busy. They chopped down trees to build homes. Then they chopped down more trees and built bigger homes. The houses grew into towns, and the towns grew into cities. They built factories and shops and cars and planes. They worked all day and all night until eventually. What do you think happened? Eventually, there was hardly any forest left. But the greedy giants had forgotten how wonderful the forest was. They didn't see all the little birds and bugs and butterflies and bears that trembled in the shadows. And no one told them to stop because everyone was scared of them. And so in this story, we see how the giants, these big companies and lots of groups of people, are just taking over the forest, chopping it all down, building houses and bigger buildings and more things. But it's hurting all of the creatures and the forest itself. No one noticed except for Greta. "Will you help us?" asked the wolf. Greta looked around her. The animals looked tired and sad. She had to help them, but how? Then Greta had an idea. Now, there have been many people around the world that have noticed these signs and worked to help heal the environment and inspire others. And Greta is one great example, especially because she noticed when she was so young and she started getting to work right away to help change how we interact with the climate and how we care for our environment. But there are so many other great examples too, and we've learned about some in my previous episodes, so check them out if you haven't yet. Greta had an idea. The next morning, Greta went to the middle of the forest and waited for the giants to come. She stood alone, holding a big sign. The sign said, "Stop!" She waited and waited. Seeing Greta here hold up a big sign reminds me of a protest. Have you ever heard of a protest? It's when people come together to stand up for what they believe is right. When something is unfair or unsafe, people come together to protest. Sometimes they say stop, or sometimes they say pay attention, or listen, or look. On the first day, the giants didn't see her, and they lumbered on by. And on the second and third, too. But on the fourth day, something strange happened. A little boy who had been watching Greta made a sign and came and sat down next to her. He didn't say much, but Greta knew he felt just like she did. And we'll pause here, but I love this moment of collaboration. This boy saw what Greta was doing, and he joined her. He joined her to say, "Listen, things need to change. The forest is sick, the environment is hurt, and we need to stop hurting it and destroying it." And so Greta has inspired something called the climate strike, where every day she went out to protest and to say, please make new changes. She protested governments, she's protested businesses and companies, and she's inspired millions of people to make those small changes where they can and to fight for bigger changes when they're able. And so this book, Greta and the Giants, goes on to tell more of her story and continues to show beautiful and magical illustrations. But I am wondering if Greta or anyone has inspired you to get out and help care for your environment, right where you are. Oh, me too, yeah. Maybe your neighbors, maybe your family, maybe your teachers. There are people in my community who work really hard to take care of the environment, not only by setting up gardens and talking with their neighbors to share their things, but also by being aware of the choices they make and thinking really carefully before they buy something or do something that could be harmful to the environment. And so maybe you can think about those things too. And maybe you already do. And maybe you can inspire others just like Greta has. One more thing I'd like us to do today that may inspire us in a different way is to stretch our bodies together for our mindful moment. And when we practice mindfulness, it helps us clear our heads and focus just on what is happening right there in front of us, right there within us. And oftentimes, when we practice mindfulness, it can help us feel really calm and peaceful. It can help us clear our heads so later we have more space to be creative, more space to communicate kindly or share our thinking in a really thoughtful way, more space maybe to take care of our environment and inspire others to do the same. And so our mindful stretch today is going to be inspired by Greta and all of the other environmental activists and advocates that we've learned about, you and me included. And we're going to do a pose called tree pose. And all we need to do is stand up and try our best to rest our foot on our lower part of our leg by our calf or up higher by our thigh. And when we do tree pose and we try to our best to balance, we also can try to put our arms up like big branches of a tree. We can put them out, we can put them a little bit up, all the way up, whatever feels comfortable. The trickiest part of tree pose is balancing. So you may feel uneven or uneasy. You may fall over, and that's okay. You can always get up and try again. We'll try tree pose for 1 minute. Go ahead and try to get in position. You're doing a great job. Keep it up. Remember, if you fall down, that's okay. Go ahead and try again. Sometimes switching legs can help too. All right, friends, you can lower your bodies back into a comfortable seated position. And before we say goodbye, I'm curious what you notice in your body and what you may notice in your brain after trying that mindful stretch. Yeah, I notice my legs are a little shaky too. I notice my thoughts feel clear it, or my brain feels calm in a way. Thanks for sharing. Friends, thank you so much for joining me today. If you would please go ahead and hit that red subscribe button, that inspires me to keep sharing videos with you and books and stories. And I hope you make it a great rest of the day. Sending off with some love if you'd like it. A hug if you want it. And I can't wait to see you next time.